Hello, everyone. It is top of the hour. We have quite a few people still joining us, so let's give it one more minute and then we will get started. All right, I know we have a lot to cover today, so while everyone is logging in, we will go ahead and get started. As a reminder, this webinar is not for CPE credit. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box located on your menu bar, or you can use the chat feature. Any question that needs immediate assistance, I will go ahead and answer. Otherwise, all questions relating to the presentation will hang on to the end, and our presenters will answer those. And all of the phone lines have been muted. So we're going to go ahead and turn this over now to Art and Scott and get started.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Art Wiederman. I'm a partner at HMWC, CPAs and Business Advisors in Tustin, California. And welcome to our weekly update. We're a little over 6 weeks into the COVID-19 pandemic. And as with every other week, there's lots of stuff going on. Before I launch into our content today, and we've got a lot of really good stuff for you, I want to introduce who is on our webcast today. My partner in crime is Scott Haberman, who is a senior tax manager at Eide Bailly. And as we've mentioned, and for those of you who are not aware, Eide Bailly is an outstanding CPA firm with offices mostly in the Western United States. Their national office is in Fargo, North Dakota, and our firm, HMWC, is very excited that in the middle of July, we're going to be merging and become part of Eide Bailly. We're very excited about that. And Scott is a senior tax manager who spends a lot of his life working with dentists like I do. I've been doing this for 36 years, working with dentists. We also have with us today Megan Mortimer, who is a godsend to us. She is the congressional lobbyist for the American Dental Association. She has been our lifeline to the SBA and to Treasury, and as things happen, she's able to give us some updates as to where that's at. And she is talking to congressmen and senators and their staffs every day, lobbying for the best interests of the 163,000 members of the American Dental Association. And today we also have a special treat. One of my dear friends for many, many years, Terry McAvaney. Terry is the founder of Mac Concepts and Smart Start Dental. Terry is a dental coach. I've shared the stage lecturing with Terry, dozens of times, and we've talked about transitions and numbers of a dental practice. And what we're going to do today and bring resources to you in the future is Terry's going to talk to you about some of the things that you need to be doing in order to get your practice ready to open. Now, we know that dental practices are starting to open. We know they're opening, and I'm not going to get all the states right, but I know Oregon is opening May 1. I know Indiana is opening. I know Colorado is talking about it. Maybe, Megan, are there some other states that are either opening or have been authorized to open for non-emergency procedures?
There are a number of states that are doing open orders. The problem is in some of the states, they're not including dental offices in the language for essential healthcare and businesses. So we're also having to push back on those oversights from some of the state governments.
Yeah, and so we'll get into some more of that today. So first thing I want to do is kind of give you an update. Keep the slide here for a second, Amy. As all of you know, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about, well, you can go to the agenda. That's fine, Amy. We'll go to the agenda and talk about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, we're going to go over the loan forgiveness rules again. Now, we had hoped that by today, Megan and I have been watching, what'd you say, every 2 minutes you're refreshing the Treasury's website to see what they're doing. We were hoping that we were going to have extensive guidance on the rules of the road for how we calculate the forgiveness of these loans, which is what everybody wants to know. As of right now, we do not have those rules yet. We don't have anywhere near the information to walk you through what you need to do. We're going to give you our best guess today, and we're going to review those rules again. The PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, ran out of money a little over a week and a half ago. Congress passed last week, and the president signed on Friday, a $484 billion act that funded an additional $310 billion to the PPP. And of that, $60 billion was funded to smaller banks with assets of less than $10 billion, so smaller community banks. The government wanted, underserved areas, rural areas, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. This was their desire, is to get this money out to these folks. So that is what happened. $50 billion was added to the EIDL program and another $10 billion to the EIDL grant program. I think I got that right, Megan. So this money went into the queue as of yesterday. So yesterday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, what happened is they started processing loans again. And Megan, it didn't go really well, did it?
No, it crashed pretty quickly. They got it up and running again, but as expected, it was just too much of a volume of people trying to process. A lot of upset lenders who are having a hard time with the, E-Tran.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to read you. We've had Dan Bywater, who's been a great resource from Ready Capital. Dan, unfortunately, could not make it today, but I'll just read to you what he wrote to me. He said, there was a huge push for SBA numbers yesterday. They had more than double the amount of requests for numbers than they did at the high point of the first round of funding. Although there was a big surge, money is not dropping as fast as we initially thought due to the steps the SBA took. They're requiring lenders to do their due diligence part of pulling SBA numbers, where before lenders were just pulling numbers when they had the minimal amount of information. He's anticipating, and we're all anticipating that this $310 billion is going to go pretty quickly. I mean, I've heard anything from today, tomorrow, end of the week. I mean, the problem is we don't know how much is already in the queue. So if you're going to apply for this, your application has to go in today. And I don't think we recommend that you go in with one of the bigger banks. You want to find a small community bank that maybe has less of a line. I mean, many of the larger banks, Megan, I don't think they're accepting applications anymore.
Yeah, many of them have cut it off. I mean, many of them cut it off a while ago. But with this, $60 billion earmarked for the smaller lenders, it definitely helps out and would make it easier for people to access through those smaller lenders.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that if you have not, so just again, and even so, Scott, you sent me something this morning. That is about that they're going to take a look at some of the bigger loans, right?
Yeah, Mnuchin recently said that any loans over $2 million that they're going to take a close look at, and I think the words audit from the SBA came out. And so anybody that's received funds of over $2 million, expect that there might be some close examination of the loans that you're applying for and using, and then applying for forgiveness as well.
So that brings up an interesting point, and we've all heard in the news that companies like Shake Shack and Ruth Chris Steakhouse received $10 million because there was a loophole that allowed for, if you had this is supposed to be for people who have businesses have 500 or fewer employees, but there was a little loophole about per location. So Amy, let's go to our next slide here. We have another company that applied for this money. No, the one I think before this actually. Yeah, my Los Angeles Lakers apparently got a PPP loan. LeBron makes $37 million. They needed a little help with that, I guess. And and in defense, I mean, I've been a Lakers fan since I moved to California when I was 16 years old. One of my clients for 30 years was the team dentist for the Los Angeles Lakers. I've met they're my team. And I saw this and I'm thinking, on the one hand, the government made the rules that they could apply for this, and their revenues are down, although not like a dental office. But once they found out that the money was running out, they returned the funds. And that's what's happening. Apparently, I heard this morning, Megan, like $750 million of this money went to publicly held companies. That's what I heard. I don't know if you heard a number.
I've heard something similar. I've also heard that a lot of these companies are refusing to give back the money.
Yeah, and that is just, but again, you know, the government made the rules. That's kind of the way it goes. So anyway, that was, Scott actually sent me that article. I said, no way, you're kidding me. So, all right, well, let's get into our discussion we're going to talk about today. I think the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the forgiveness, and let's get into this a little bit. Now, according to the CARES Act, remember, there's three pieces to this, folks. The first piece is the application piece, and this is where you've applied for this loan. And I would say probably 80 to 90% of the people, I'm guessing, Scott and Megan, that are going to apply for this money have already done it, or they're in the process of doing it. That would be my guess. And what's amazing to me, and this is the government, this is just the way it is. So on April 3rd, this money came out. This was available. On April 24th, 3 weeks later, this past Friday, the SBA came out with interim guidance explaining how you calculate the way to apply if you're a sole proprietor, partnership, S corporation, or C corporation. So, you know, that would be like, I don't know, how do I explain this? You've already done a crown prep in your first day at dental school, and it's all done, and then they give you the rules of how to do a crown prep. That's basically what this was, right? I mean, it's crazy. So they gave us these rules, and I'm still not sure about them. And we're not even going to get into what that said because it was for the application part. So folks, we are waiting for the forgiveness. My hope, Scott's hope, Megan's hope is that when we talk to you a week from today, that we will spend the majority of the program walking you through all of the nuances of the forgiveness. When do I have to bring my employees back? What does the term incurred mean? How much of my pension contribution can I put in? Is it the 2019 number? Is it the 2020 number? You know, can I buy Nike shoes that LeBron James wears with this money? I don't know. I mean, you know, we're looking at all different kinds of things. I mean, Megan, you're even, are we allowed to talk about some of the things you guys are doing as far as PPP money?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we've asked for flexibility on the 8-week loan forgiveness since we got any sort of guidance coming out, just because we want dental offices to be able to, you know, maybe use that money when they're closer to opening. You know, maybe just extend it 30 days. And there's a lot of discussions happening in Congress to look at that. The problem is, what do we do with the people who are already following the rules and have already started their 8-week loan forgiveness? And have already started to rehire people back? How do we ensure that they are feeling like they're on a level playing field? So there's discussions happening there. Also, when it comes to PPE, we believe that PPP loan funds should be able to be used for PPE in dental offices and medical offices, especially if we're going to be purchasing large equipment for the safety and health of the dentists and their employees and patients. So we're asking a lot from Treasury, SBA, and Congress to provide a lot more flexibility for the, you know, applicability of these loans in various ways.
And we're even talking to them about maybe getting a tax credit for them. Who knows?
Yes, we are. We are talking about tax credits as well for PPE and, you know, other various aspects that go into a dental practice, and the need for having to have these things in place before people start reopening so they feel comfortable doing so.
Now the good news, Megan, is that we have a CARES 2.0 that is already in discussions, right?
Yes, very much so. And everyone's asking for our input, and so we are providing them with our input over and over again.
So remember that this all came from the CARES Act that was passed, signed by the president on March 27th, which was an 880-page document that put $2.2 trillion into the economy. CARES 2.0 is what they're calling this. And this is where you're probably going to see anything that the American Dental Association is able to convince Congress to do for dentists. You're going to find it in CARES 2.0, I suspect, right? Megan?
Right. I mean, as we've seen with Treasury and SBA kind of making their own rules in some ways, we have also reached out to them to say, you know, if you can provide this flexibility without congressional approval, if you feel you have the purview to do that, please do so. But in the meantime, we're also still pushing to have all of those things included in whatever next package happens.
Okay. So let's go through the rules. And Scott, maybe jump in. Maybe you start talking about some of these rules. You know them as well as I do. I mean, you've been living and breathing them like I have.
Definitely.
Let's talk about how this forgiveness works. Scott, you want to jump in and talk about the forgiveness?
Sure. So there's a couple different factors that go into the forgiveness calculation, and it goes back to what you applied for the loan. That's based upon payroll. So the feds want you to use at least 75% of the funds on the PPP from the PPP loans to get your employees back to work. That's the intention of the loan and the program, is to get people back onto payroll. And so what they want you to do is to use 75% of those funds on payroll. And what's payroll? Well, it's that amount up to $100,000 per employee. And then also the health insurance premiums and the 401k contributions on behalf of the employer for those employees. So we need a lot more guidance in this area, such as, can you bonus out your employees or incentivize them, provide some kind of pay package of maybe prepaying their pay before the end of the 8 weeks is up, so you can use those PPP funds. That's one of the factors. The other three items are mortgage interest, number one, and then utilities, which includes gas, light, heat, internet access, and so forth. And then third is rent. So those are the other three factors. And they don't want you to use more than 25% of those funds on those three other items. So those are the four factors that really go into the PPP forgiveness calculation. And then also they want you to bring back the same amount of employees that you had before the pandemic began. So they'll test that at the earlier of, you see that on Art's slide of June 30th or the end of the 8 weeks that's up. So there's a lot that goes into the calculation, a lot of unknowns that we're still waiting on. And I'm sure Art's head is spinning every day just waiting for that information, and everybody else on this call too.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, like I say, Megan has been amazing as far as soon as she sees something, she immediately sends it to us, and we're right on top of this better than anybody in the country, to be real frank with you, because she's just been great. Thank you again for all you've done to help us. So again, let's just kind of look at some different things, because I want to make sure I give Terry plenty of time, because we don't have all the forgiveness updates for you today. If you haven't applied for this loan, I make you no promises. We don't know if there's going to be a third round. Again, I mean, we've heard anywhere. This government's already gone $3 trillion into debt. I think there's a limit as to how much money even the United States of America can print at some point. So we don't know what's going to happen. If you haven't applied, get your application in today. Get it in with a smaller bank. Look at a PayPal or a smaller companies that do this, because you're going to have a better chance getting in. The good news is, one of my long-term clients who he's old school, he faxed everything to the banker, and he got everything in, and it finally got in on Friday, and he applied, they put it in, and he got his loan this morning. And so they are making loans, and a lot of dentists have gotten their money. So if you haven't applied, do it today, folks. Don't wait if you want this money. If you've got your stuff at the bank, call your banker if you can get a hold of him or her and find out, where are they in the queue? Is my stuff there? Do you need anything else? If I need anything else, get it to them today. Please, please, please do that. If your bank has already sent the stuff to the SBA, there's really nothing for you to do. The SBA is backlogged beyond belief. They're trying to hire so many people. They can only do so much. And their system crashed and burned right out of the gate yesterday. And in fact, Megan and I were talking before this. One of my clients and I were trying to get onto the EIDL. And this is another thing you should do. Hopefully this will come up. The system right now, if you want to go and apply for an EIDL loan and you haven't done it, my client wanted to do it. He says, Art, I've been trying since you told me 2 days ago, and it's down. So Megan, I think you just tried it, and it was down.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is processing the backlog of the people they already had in the queue. And maybe that's what's preventing them from opening it back up again. Because what if they start accepting applications and the money runs out with the people that had already applied? But I'm hopeful that that will remedy itself by this afternoon.
Because folks, here's the deal. If you can get, and I've got clients that have gotten idle money, hundreds of thousands of dollars if you applied early. If you don't get any PPP money, but you do get idle money, the idle money cannot be used to refinance debt. It can't be used for capital improvements. It can't be used for repairs. It can be used as working capital. So if you don't get PPP money and your dental office opens May 20th and you've got $200,000, yeah, it's not forgivable, but you don't have to pay it back starting you have to pay it back starting in 12 months. And it's over 30 years at 3.75%. So that's working capital. So if you have not applied for the idle loan money, you should do that immediately. As my late mother used to say, immediately, if not sooner. So let's go to the next slide, please. So we were hoping to get the forgiveness again. We have a planning tool. It is on, I don't know if it's on Eide Bailly's website, but I know it's on HMWC's website. Which is www.hmwccpa.com. If you go to our coronavirus page, and it's, I think it's the third article down, it's our PPP planner spreadsheet. What I did is, I might have jumped the gun a little bit, but I thought about it, I really didn't, because what you need to do is, for those of you who have either gotten a number from the SBA, and if you've gotten a number from the SBA, you're good. You're going to get your money. It may not be today. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be till next week. But if you have from the what's called the ITRAN system, if you have an approval number, you will be funded. And once you get your money, folks, the day that that money goes into your account, that's when the 8-week period starts. And the banks are required to give you that money within 10 calendar days. And they are doing it much faster than that. They're doing it within 24 to 48 hours. So once you're approved, you're going to get your money. Okay, so for those of you who already have your money, those of you who are going to get your money, use our planning spreadsheet, work with your Eide Bailly CPA, work with your HMWC CPA. And for our HMWC clients, for all of you wonderful folks that are listening, and again, thank you for your trust and faith in all of us, and myself and Don Watson, Pam Chamberlain, Sam William, our whole team. I'm the one in the group that's doing the PPP consulting. I've worked with several of you already. Once you get your money, don't do anything. Call me. Call Scott. Call and if call your CPA that you're working with. And Scott at Eide Bailly, how's that working? Or do you have a point person that's helping out with this?
Yeah, so each of our offices around the country, we have a number of champions, and so I'm one of the champions in our Colorado offices, and so we're helping all of our partners and managers across the firm guide their clients through the application for forgiveness rules, and based upon the information what we have right now, we've been helping them plan for the use of these funds.
Right, and so since you're a champion, you get like a Vince Lombardi trophy. Is that how that works?
I get a nice paper plaque that I can hang on my wall next to my kids' artwork.
There you go. So folks, here's the deal. If you've got your money, don't start spending it. Call one of us, because here's what I'm going to be doing and what Scott's going to be doing once we get these regulations. I have contacts at all the major banks. Scott has contacts at the major banks in his area and on the East Coast. We, through the Academy of Dental CPAs, we have contacts with some of the other banks. We will be talking to these banks and saying to the banks, bank, tell us exactly how you're going to compute the forgiveness. Is there a checklist we can get? Is there something we can get so that we make sure that our clients submit this information to the bank in a correct way? Because remember, think about where you're going here. The end game, folks, is we want 100% forgiveness of this money. If you spend it the way Scott was talking, which is payroll, rent, utilities, and interest, if you spend it that way and we package this up right, think about it this way. It's going to be going to an underwriter at a bank who's going to have hundreds of files on his or her desk. It's not like when a patient comes into your office, You talk to them, you find out about their family, you find out how they're doing, you find out about their health. These people don't care about your health. They just care about getting hundreds of files off of their desk. So they're going to go through mathematical calculations. So what we need to do is to make their jobs easier. Just like Scott, you've been to an IRS audit or two for clients, right?
I stay away from them, Art. I don't let those come to my clients.
Oh, that's right. Your clients don't get audited.
Yeah,
I forgot. Right. We should merge with your firm. Oh, we are. That's right. Okay. So anyway, what the point is with an IRS audit, the number one thing you want to do is to be prepared and have documentation. It's the same thing here. We will, as this goes down, as these 8-week periods start to go, we're now a week, 10 days into the earliest that anybody's gotten money that I'm aware of. We will have updates every week for you as to what to do. But use this planning checklist, this planning spreadsheet that's on our website, just as a 35,000-foot view plan of how are you going to spend the money. I've had doctors who have said, I'm not going to spend the money until my staff comes back, until my team comes back. Fine, that's your choice. Miss Terry is going to have something to say about that, right, Terry, when we start letting you talk here shortly, I promise. And so she's going to talk about that. But you may just say, I had a doctor the other day said, I'm going to take my salary, I'm going to pay my staff when they come back, and whatever I get forgiven, I get forgiven. Now, remember again, folks, you've signed a piece of paper, Form 2483, SBA 2483, that says that you agree to spend this money as it is intended. And if you don't, the government can bring federal fraud charges on you. Now, I don't think the government's got a lot of resources or a lot of desire to start bringing federal fraud charges on honest people who are trying to follow the law. But you have to be really careful, and we'll find out how this forgiveness works. And if you don't spend all of this money, you can either return it, you can take it as a loan that you pay back at 1% interest for 2 years with no payments for 6 months, or you can keep it as working capital, we think. Hey, Megan, have you heard anything about that? Like, I know in the CARES Act, it says that you have to spend the money on the required items, but is it your understanding that the doctors are allowed to keep this money for working capital if they don't spend it?
So we had a dentist today email us to let us know that their lender told them that they could do that they could just use it for working capital, and have decided to do that. Again, I want to await guidance before I start making declaratory statements, but we have had a couple of dentists who are like, you know what, we don't want forgiveness. We just want to have this as working capital, and that's what we're going to do. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So let's move to the next slide. Okay, so for those of you, like I say, to put a bow on that, if you either have your SBA number or you have your money in your account, stop, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Call Scott, call me, HMWC clients who are dentists, call me, and I will walk you through. I've done this a dozen times now. But for those of you who may either not apply for this money or who may not get this money, because again, we don't know, folks, if there's going to be round 3 of this money. I mean, we've heard from different sources that, I mean, there's millions of small businesses. And we've heard $850 billion to $1.5 trillion is needed, and they've got $660 billion in this program. How much more in debt are they going to go into? That is a decision that is above Megan's and my pay grade. That is not our decision. We will find out how that works. If you do not get this money, we have an option for you. It's not as good, but it will save you money. So Scott, I'm going to let you again tell everybody about the employee retention tax credit.
Sure. Yeah, this is another benefit that was introduced as part of the CARES Act. So the employee retention credit, or ERC, that you might read about in the news, is a payroll tax credit that you can apply for if your business has been obviously closed, which all dental practices out there have been for the last at least 6 weeks or so. And what this is you can apply for this credit with your CPA and payroll company, whoever is handling your payroll, to receive a refund of your Social Security taxes, and then any amount over that paid in is refundable. And so there's a couple different moving parts there, and it's up to $5,000 is the tax credit amount. and that's a 50% on $10,000 in wages paid during the time you've been closed. And so what that is okay, we'll go through an example in a couple slides from now. So if you can go to the next slide, Amy. So for most of the dental practices out there, you're operating with less than 100 employees. So if you go down to that second section and you look through and read that, that's businesses with less than 100 employees can claim wages for the credit during full or partial suspension due to mandated COVID-19 related closure, or you're seeing a greater than 50% decline in gross receipts for a quarter when compared to the same quarter in 2019. So Q3 or Q1, you've been closed, obviously, for part of March, so you can apply for the credit for that quarter. And then Q2, as we're starting up right now, it's probably going to be more than likely somewhere around that 50% decline compared to Q2 of 2019. But if you spike up pretty quick and you rebound past that 80% in Q2, you can still claim the credit for this quarter. But then Q3, if you're back up, still over 80%, you're not eligible to claim that credit for Q3. So more than likely, you're going to get a credit of $5,000 for each of your employees you have employed during 2020. So go ahead and go to the next slide there, Amy. And so, as Art mentioned, you're not eligible for this credit if you make use of the new SBA loan, so the PPP program. EIDL, from our understanding, you can still participate in the EIDL loan and receive this credit that Art also mentioned about briefly ago. So go ahead and go to the next slide, Amy. And so here's an example. So Art's thriving dental practice has 4 employees with a total of $70,000 in wages for the quarter. And so you take the $10,000 per employee for the total of $40,000 for the quarter times 50%, you have a $20,000 employee retention credit that you can apply for. So part of that is applied for on your payroll filings, and then the rest of it is applied for using form, I believe it's 7200 that you file with the government. And so that'll be able to get you your $20,000 back relatively quickly. And so that's a general overview of the employee retention credit. And it hasn't really received that much press because obviously everyone would rather have a substantial amount of free money from the government, say $200,000 or so, compared to the $20,000 credit. So the PPP is by far a better option the majority of the time, but this is a good second option if you don't end up receiving any PPP funds. But still, like Art said, I mean, we might see more money come down the pike for PPP. I think that there is a lot of need out there, and hopefully the government fills that need.
Yeah, and thank you for that. If Art's $20,000 employee retention credit would probably cover his malpractice insurance because Art would probably not be a very good dentist, but that's another conversation for another day. So I want to wrap this up because I do want to get to Terry and Amy. We have till about a little less than an hour, right? Amy?
We have till, I think we just had an hour today. Let me look at it one more time.
I thought it was 90 minutes. I want to make sure.
Yes, it is 90 minutes. So,
right. So
yep.
we have, so Terry, you're going to have a little less than an hour. I want to wrap this up with one other conversation that we're going to have before I go to this. Just folks, listen. Terry, are you going to talk about the ADA toolkit, or should we do that now?
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and do it now. I was going to just broach on it, so let's bring it up now. It's good.
Okay, so the ADA has this wonderful toolkit, and Megan, where do they find it on the website?
It's on the landing page right now on the ada.org website.
And guys, talk about what that is.
I mean, it's essentially guidance to provide to dental offices of what they need to do to prepare to reopen. And it gives a pretty good overview of what they should expect, how they should go about opening up their practice. I'm sure Terry can get more into the details of how it's going to align with what she's going to talk about. But we wanted to put out guidance because everyone was really asking for it in terms of what we feel the ADA feels dental practices need to do to be ready to reopen. Okay.
So Terry, I'm going to take about 5 more minutes and I'm going to talk about business interruption insurance, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay. Give you an idea of I have 50 minutes to do this. So There has been talk, and I have been talking to a very dear friend of mine who's an attorney who is actually going to come onto this webcast next week and talk about this subject. So most of you have what's called business interruption insurance. And that is either through a separate insurance policy or in your liability policy that you have. California, we have TDIC, other companies out there that sell this, that offers income replacement for business interruption. So for example, Hurricane Katrina in southern Louisiana, that's what this was intended for. The California wildfires in Northern California, an earthquake, a hurricane, or tornado. That's what business interruption insurance. Your dental office is damaged or burns down or is wiped off the face of the earth by a fire. That's what this is for. Again, fires, natural disasters. Most of these policies, and I say most of them, especially after the SARS outbreak back, I think it was 2003, now have in one way, shape, or form, not all of them, exclusions that basically you cannot get paid from a loss that is not caused by the actual physical loss of your property. I mean, your dental office is perfectly fine. It's just that we have a virus that is affecting human beings. And the insurance company's position is that money, that loss is not an allowable loss in these policies. So all I will tell you is this. I work with an attorney. If you want their name, you can email me. My email information is going to be up on here. You can call me. It's Art.Wiederman, WIEDERMAN at HMWCCPA.com. And I will refer you to this attorney. He's in Southern California. He and I have done a lot of cases together. He will be on here. His name is Randy Curry. He'll be on here next week to talk about this for a little bit. There is litigation in the courts right now where basically insurance companies are being sued because of public policy and this and that and the other thing. And there is legislation out there to cover, federal government and the states are starting to look at legislation on the horizon that could require insurers to pay for losses. And so your policy has a time frame that you have to make a claim. If your office has a fire on, let's pick March 16th, because that happened to be the day that most dental offices shut down. If your office has a fire on that date, you have X number of days, according to your policy, and they're all different, to file a claim. Well, we are now about, close to 45 days into this. Randy mentioned to me when we were on the phone, and he'll actually be on my podcast that comes out tomorrow, The Art of Dental Finance and Management. He's going to talk a little bit about this, and I'm going to bring him on next week to this group. And basically, one thing you should consider doing is filing a claim. There's nothing illegal about, I'm not a lawyer, but there's nothing illegal about filing a claim. The insurance company is probably going to deny it, but when you're working with a professional attorney who knows how these laws work and the different ways that they work and the different provisions that are in there, this is something that you should be looking at. I am not saying that this is the saving grace. If you don't get a PPP loan, and if patients don't come back to your office, and if you don't get an EIDL loan, this is, don't bet on this. But this is something that you should consider looking at and having a professional do. I've actually, my Instagram, I get a lot of dental stuff on my Instagram just because of the folks I hang out with. That's my career. And there are lots of different companies out there that are advertising that they can help you with this. And this is real. And this could be something, and I don't think it's going to take a lot of effort. So all I'm saying is if you want the information, you can go ahead and email me. I'll make the information available to Scott and the folks at Eide Bailly so that if you wanted to, Randy has offered to take a look at our clients' policies and to see if there's anything and if it makes sense. And he is as professional as it gets. I've worked with him on disability consulting as an expert witness in court. And I'll tell you what, if any of you are having trouble sleeping, read your disability policies. I mean, it is the biggest bunch of gobbledygook that you've ever read in your life. So I just wanted to bring this up for you, for our clients today, just to be thinking about this. listen to the podcast that comes out tomorrow morning. And Randy, we'll have Randy on next week. So without any further ado, what I would like to do is to turn this meeting over to my dear friend, Terry McAvaney. Terry is a dental coach. She's the founder of Mac Concepts and Smart Start Dental. And Terry came to me a couple of weeks ago and she said, Art, you know, I'm going to offer up, you know, an opportunity for your clients if they need help in trying to figure out how do we get started from a management standpoint. I'm going to, you know, I'd like to help. And then I thought, well, shoot, why don't I just bring her on a webinar? And she and I presented on Friday to what I think is 60 dentists of one of our specialist clients. And that went great. So Terry, I'm going to turn this meeting over to you and let you talk about how do we, how do we look at opening? And just for, you know, those of you in California, Governor Newsom is literally in the next 20 minutes going to get on TV. I won't be able to watch it, but I'm sure you'll be able to see it tonight. He's going to get on TV and talk about what's going on. And don't know if he's going to talk about when dental offices are going to open. I doubt it. He's just going to talk about his overall plan, but we're very hopeful that this is going to happen sooner rather than later. So Terry, take it away.
Thank you again. I appreciate this opportunity. It's so true, Art. I mean, I've been going through so much material, so much information. I think all of the communication I've had recently from the webinars that I've been providing is there are so many questions. And I thank all of you on this panel for taking the time to go through this information and just break the financial aspect of it down. It is so confusing. Doctors are still calling me, asking me questions. So I've been referring them over to you, to your websites and all the information and promoting this opportunity. So I want to kind of take it from not just the financial, I think that's all for your area of expertise, but I really want to engage the doctors on this webinar today to think about the reboot plan for their practice. I think oftentimes, now I analyze practices often, Art knows that. I'm very analytical when it comes down to breaking down systems and practices. The practice is what we know, not just now during this crisis, but even prior. If your practice wasn't managed real well, then your recovery might take a little bit of time. It's kind of like the patient that has immune system issues. They're a little more susceptible to COVID. This is no different from the business standpoint in your practice. What we really need to do is look at the practice from the inside. We look at data a lot, but we need to understand how that data translates to your recovery and then obviously for your profit in your practice. So the reboot plan is going to be kind of basic in nature. I actually took 3 different steps and it's really broken down to the patient's team and the systems. That really is what encompasses the practice. So let's kind of break it down into the patients. Right now, and I still have been hearing this, I don't know if anybody else on the panel, please chime in here. This is kind of open to everybody. I want to find out if very many practices that you know of, have they been communicating with their patients via website, email, texting, some of the communication systems? Do you know if most of the doctors out there have been communicating, or have they even got onto their websites and said, hey, we are open for emergencies? Do any of you have any feedback on that? Because I've seen some crazy numbers out there for non-communication.
Yeah, Terry, I'll jump in on that. I'm getting some of our clients who are saying, I'm not going to bring my team back until we're back in the office. It's a waste of money to pay them with this PPP money. I'm getting clients who are just not doing a lot of the things that they need to be doing. I mean, you know, talk about getting, and you're going to talk about this, is just what is your office, what is my dental practice going to look like when this opens up? Getting PPP equipment, what kind of sanitary steps are we going to be taking? How are we going to be, you know, how's this going to work? So, I mean, some of them are, a lot of them are not. Scott, what are you hearing?
Yeah, so as much as communication goes, I think the last communication for majority of my clients were shut down for the typical procedures, but we're open for emergencies, and that's really the last communication. And then receiving text messages and emails about, well, we're planning to reopen this date, but then sometimes their hands are tied when they're waiting on the state or licensing boards to give them the go-ahead to open up shop again. And so they might have said, we're going to open on this date, but then we're told, well, let's sit tight by whatever governing board until we get the full go-ahead. And so I think it's been just a lot of misinformation out there, which has been a struggle for a lot of my clients, a lot of docs out there.
Sure. And I think, thank you for that information. And it's true. I think that we are waiting, we're kind of waiting in the wings without really a plan. You don't necessarily have to have your entire team in the practice to start communicating. You can really come into this and use different means. And I'm going to go down and break this down into this 3-step plan. But right now, there should be communication like never before. There's information out there. I know on my Nextdoor, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but a lot of the communities have this Nextdoor app. And I had one on there the other day. I think I shared this with Art in the last meeting we did. And, you know, do you know of any doctors that are open? I mean, that really concerned me when these patients out here are having absolutely no communication. So first and foremost, we're going to hit the patients with some communication. And it's never too late. And we're all taking care of the financial aspect of the business, which is obviously very, very important. But we do need to plan moving forward. So I'll talk about that in a little more detail. The team themselves, the team needs leadership. We need to make sure that we are reaching out to the team and planning and communicating. Already, even this morning, I think I had 2 or 3 clients just chime in and say, hey, you know what, my team doesn't want to come back. What am I supposed to do? So I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then the practice cleanup, as I started out by saying, we can't forget how to make sure that our practices are running on all cylinders. So I do want to make sure that we're talking about that. And that's how we're going to hit the ground running. The practices that are in better condition going into this are going to recover a little bit faster. I think it's a prime opportunity. This is never too late. This is not, hey, you're behind the 8 ball now. Just throw your hands up and see what happens or cross your fingers. It's not that plan. That isn't really a plan. So I'm going to break this down and go over what you can do now. And hopefully some of you have been doing some of these things. But let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Amy, if you don't mind. Let's go into a little more detail about how you're going to keep your goodwill. Your goodwill is everything. This is what we're all here for. You are really the necessary workers out here. We have to remember what we're doing. So we have to reach out to the patient base and let them know that as well. I know people are scared. Patients are scared to come back. Teams are scared to come back. And so the best thing we can do right now, whether you have a website, whether you've got a system, communication systems, there's tons of them out there. Lighthouse, Solution Reach, Demand Force, I can name off several. Just to name a few, those are resources that hopefully you haven't gotten rid of. There's a lot of things when you remove some of the marketing features of your practice, you lose a lot of the reviews and things like that. So hopefully that hasn't happened. I would go ahead and suggest bringing that back online. The updates on the COVID itself, I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier. There's a lot of information that you can prepare for. I want to talk about for patient communication in that toolkit that we were mentioning earlier. There is a back to work toolkit that has a welcome back letter for patients. So before this, I would have loved to have a letter go out or some communication. Again, it's not too late if we're in this time frame. I know California isn't opening up just yet. I don't know. We're crossing our fingers on May 15th. I'm not sure. I know Ohio just opened up. I think Art, you already named off some other states. But let's get the information. Yeah, let's get some information out there. I see more and more of them coming online. So pre-appointment screening is going to be a huge part of this. I'd like to make sure people are always, I think, less fearful, and they feel so much better about kind of putting that first step forward and coming into the practice when they know you're doing things to protect them. We're all walking around with masks, you know, we're all social distancing. So all those things being said, let's go ahead and communicate that we're going to follow the same processes. We should talk about PPE in the practice. Let's make sure that we're saying these are the things that we're addressing. Some of it has somewhat of an optic persona, such as plexiglass. I've talked about that a little bit, but let's talk about the things that are going to keep them safe and explain that in advance. I'd love to have even some type of banner or something over there or on their landing page of their website. But nonetheless, we have to start pushing this information out there so the patients, our goodwill, are what we're really there for and what we need to reach out to make sure our practices are going to survive. You talked about, employee retention. We need to focus on the retention of the patients. So let's start there with the plan by at least communicating with them that we do have a plan, and the plan is for safety. I like to use some dialogue, although we've always maintained the highest standards with infection control and all of those important aspects of running a sterile environment. We're going to a greater extent, and then share some of it with them in layman's terms so they can understand it. So the whole point of this is also get to the bottom line, and that's encouraging the patients to return. Not only are we going to tell them they have a safe environment, but we really need to tell them that it's so important for them to maintain their health. There's going to be different, I won't use all this time, but going back and scheduling, I think you might have somebody coming on for scheduling and really breaking down who we need to be seeing first, etc. There's going to be a lot of adjustment going on, but this isn't an area that you have to do a lot of work on. Super easy. Step one, your reboot is talk to your patients. Communicate with them, let them know you're here, and let them know that you have a plan for their protection and that you're here for their health. Pretty basic, and I think we usually do this even prior to this whole COVID crisis. We did this before. We need to do it better, because those that are not communicating right now, there's a good chance that if they're talking to family members, coworkers, friends, whomever, and they find a practice that's probably doing it better, that's a marketing issue for your practice. We've got to go into the retention.
Hey, Carrie, I've gotten 2 or 3 calls from clients who are advertising on Instagram and Facebook that they're open for emergencies, and what they're telling me is, here's the phone call. The phone call is, oh my God, you're like the 5th office I call. You're open? You're kidding? You can help me? You can see me? Yeah, we can see you. And yeah, great. And there you go. That's what's happening, right?
Yeah, and it's a lifeline, and it seems to me that, I'm going to talk about the team next, and there is a plan. There are things we can do to make sure that we're still upholding that communication. So just like on an emergency, I mean, I'll go through practices and we'll talk about, okay, how are we going to communicate with our patients? Even if the office is closed, even if it's after hours, there's always some emergency phone number left, either on a machine or a service or whatever. We should have those things on our websites. So not going into all the different aspects of it, but yeah, you mentioned social media, another great place to put this information out there for the patients. You just can't go dark on your patients right now. It is going to have a negative impact somewhere along the line. We won't necessarily know that. In my prediction, as I go back in, obviously full speed ahead with what I normally do, I'm kind of, on the outs right now myself. But once I get back in there, I'm going to be looking at some of those communication patterns for doctors that are coming in and purchasing practices. I want to know, did we leave our patients hanging? So right now, you can do this today. Let's get out there and communicate with the patients. So let's talk about how to do that too. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk about the step 2 plan, and that's your team communications. Again, kind of the same means. Are we going to send them letters, email, text, phone calls, use Zoom, Skype, whatever, communicate. But I can tell you right now, this is where your leadership, this is kind of getting up to the plate and stepping up and, okay, let's see what we're going to do. They're going to be looking at you. It's not as though you have to be a master in leadership. I know a lot of doctors, have concerns in that area, or maybe haven't had a lot of training in that area. Nonetheless, it's pretty simple to get on the phone and communicate, or at least start having some type of forum. I had one of my clients actually she shared with me the cutest, I think she's got a Google Docs or template on that. She did her own little PowerPoint, and it used a little humor, which I love, and I know Art loves, because I laugh at a lot of stuff when we're on stage, and I think he's hilarious, so I always laugh.
And that's the only reason I invited you on, is because
you're funny. None of my knowledge is.
No, your knowledge is irrelevant. It's you find me funny, and that's why you're here. You know that.
I know. We have a rule in my house. My husband has to make me laugh all the time, every day. That's why we've had 27 years of marriage. Right. But she brought a little humor into how she re-engaged with her team, and I absolutely loved it, because what I found that was so phenomenal in that, she kind of lowered some stress on that too. She says, okay, this is what I'm doing at home with my kids. And she had this, funny little picture of her kind of going crazy, bringing in some of the information about some of the employees. Oh, you're probably having a great time with your dogs, or just making it a little personalized. I can tell you it's going to go a long way. For those doctors that are experiencing the team, I'm not coming back. We have to kind of push a reset button in a sense and saying, okay, how are we communicating with our teams? Not just before this, but during and after. What are we going to do? There are going to be some team members that just simply decide they don't want to come back into this. We have a high risk, high exposure business, and the team members are looking at that. I don't know if the fear is so heightened, because most of them probably understand, at least to some degree, some of the protocols are in place, and they've been doing this. It's not as if we've had this horrible situation in dental practices to where everybody's fearful to be in this business. But we have to talk about and educate the team as far as what type of risks and what are we doing? How am I keeping you safe, and how are we going to keep our patients safe? And we have to choreograph how we're communicating that. I can't share enough that training, in my opinion, is a weak point in a lot of practices. Again, from evaluating practices, there might be, and that might come into turnover of teams, but we have got to update the team so we can then impart that update and the educational aspect to the patients. We have to be able to share that so everybody feels safe. So you have to lead with positivity. We can't come in there and say, oh me, oh my. Right now, I see 166 participants on this right now. And that means that they're here to not only learning about how to financially keep their practice afloat. This is the other part. This is the operational reboot they want to look at. So engage, support the team. One of the things I think is important is to call them individually, ask them how they're doing. I heard from one webinar, somebody did a pizza party. I thought that was a really cute idea. The doctor said, we're going to do a Zoom meeting. I'm sending pizza to you guys at home, and we're going to get on and have a pizza party. Now, you can't make them necessarily be on your pizza party. It sounds kind of fun. It's free. It's a free meal. So why not? You don't have to pay them. You say, hey, if you want to join, we're having a pizza party. So, outside of all the issues, well, do they need to be paid during that pizza party and everything else? I think it's just, hey, you want to come on board, we're going to have a little party. So engage them that way. You have to address the HR. Again, another really weak spot in practices. And again, it can be remedied. The HR aspect of a practice, I have always been a proponent of having a good HR system. Most practices, I would say 90% of them don't. I think it's an area that during and after this, we have to look at very differently. In addition to standard operating procedures, all of the important factors of running our business safely, there's a lot of things that we have to keep updated. I mean, it's a tough business, it really is. So let's present the reboot plan to the team. I think once you get there, you're going to see the things that are so important. Employee retention. Look at on the financial end. We're doing everything we can. Look at all the banks and everybody else that's out there trying to help with employee retention. It goes beyond money. It goes into the communications and how we work with our teams. So I can't say enough. My protocol to all the doctors I've been communicating with, communicate weekly. I can tell you, my sister's a hygienist. She's had one doctor that's communicated a little bit, and it actually sent something, said, hey, I decided not to do the PPP loan because of whatever he thought it was. It didn't sound right to me. So there's a lot of uninformed doctors out there. So nonetheless, let's get back into the team communication. It's going to serve you. Leadership, planning, communication are key right now. Okay.
Hey, Terry, can I jump in and ask a question? You and I have talked about this. So the reality of this is, and we're hearing this, and Scott, I know you're hearing this, and Megan, I know you're hearing this, is many dental team members are saying to their dentist owners, I don't want to come back because I'm making more money on unemployment than I'm making if you bring me this money back. I was telling another webinar on Friday, there was an article in one of the major magazines about this young woman in California who had 27 employees at a graphic design firm. She got her PPP loan. She put everybody back on payroll. She did a Zoom meeting. She started getting nasty texts and nasty emails and people quitting and saying, you're just taking this money because you just want to pay your rent. And to me, let's talk about that, because that is reality. We're going to get some of that, right, Terry? And in my mind, my immediate answer is there's 26 million people in this country who have filed for unemployment benefits in the last 4 weeks. And if that team member doesn't care enough about the practice to come back, to help get ready, to help get going, we're going to find somebody better. What do you think about that, Terry?
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you kind of brought that up. The response that I've had, I had a doctor this morning I was talking to, he already had one assistant. He's doing some, obviously, emergency treatment right now in California, but he had to hire an assistant because his assistant refused to come back. So the reason why I'm talking about communications is the more we have a better relationship with our team members, the better chance. I'm not saying it's foolproof just because you're communicating with them, whether you're serving them pizza or not. It's a kind of a moot point, but it does matter how engaged they are. And for the team members that make that decision, you have to have a contingency plan. We can't come into this. This isn't a plan if we're not having some contingency plans. What I'm telling doctors to do is follow the right HR protocol, number one. Again, because so many don't have one, I'm making sure that, hey, let's make sure you get to an HR company. I know there's a lot out there. Art, you know the one that I recommend a lot just because I'm most familiar with them. But I can tell you right now, you've got to do it the right way. There's still going to be labor law issues involved in this, and we definitely have to handle it correctly. But you're a business owner, you need to protect that business. You're doing everything you can right now to protect it. So I say have a contingency plan. For those that are already hearing that, get an ad out there just in case. There are rules. I mean, the team members can eventually abandon their positions, which are grounds for obviously replacing them. So I'm not going to speak on labor law. It is not my wheelhouse, but I can tell you right now, my suggestion is to have that alternative plan, the contingency plan. Make sure that at least you get somebody out there. I don't know, temp agencies are probably going to go a little crazy. I just think there's going to be a lot of movement. I know in some areas there's a high turnover in this field, but you're right. A lot of them are looking at the fact that, hey, if I can stay home and get money, get paid, then I'd rather do that and not work. Well, that isn't really what's going to survive. I mean, what we're going to find is the practices that come back into this, and they have a group of team members that are going to lock arms and engage. That's what we have to have. Not easy today, but I will say that, attitudinally, we've got to look at that a little bit differently. That's why I want the communication now. I'm even suggesting for doctors to have the communication individually, get on the phone. How are you feeling about this? How's your family? If some of them are saying, you know what, I've got kids to take care of, or I have a sick parent or something, they're going to fall under some of these guidelines. I know, again, I talked about several times, there is the CARES Act that has some areas in there where they are protected to some degree. But I would say that get on the phone, figure out if you think somebody is, in your ideals, a risk for not coming back, go ahead and start looking for somebody else. You may also decide in this planning, depending on how long this goes on. Now, we've got a moving target that we're still looking at here. This is why some people are doing nothing, and I don't think that's a good plan. Let's move a little bit with the target, and eventually we're going to stop, and then we're going to be able to adjust. But let's move a little bit with it. We've got to flex a little bit so that we understand these are the things we can do now to obviously come back with patients and team. So move a little bit with it, have a contingency plan, and let's go from there. Art, do you have any other questions on that?
No, I'm good. I'll just tell you that yesterday I talked to one of our new clients. He bought a practice that closed on March 3rd. Talk about timing, right?
Yeah, I have two of them like that.
Yeah, he was able to get in there for about a week, and that was about it. So I said, well, how big is the practice? He says, it's a small practice. I said, how many patients are there? Just 250 active patients in the practice. It's a small practice, right?
Mhm.
And I said to him, I want you to take this PPP money. He got approved. Long story. Don't need to get into it. I know you're supposed to be in business. He was technically in business before Scott, before February 5th. I don't know how it happened. He got PPP money. All right. And he gets this money. And I said to him, here's what I want you to do. I want you to bring your team back. I want you to pay your team. And I want you to call every single patient in your practice. He says, that's brilliant. I said, Monday's my brilliant day. Absolutely. Tuesday, not so much. Monday, well, Wednesday. Tuesday's good too because we're on the webinar. But anyway, and he says, this is what I'm going to do. And I said, you don't know any of these patients. And I said, you need to do that. I mean, calling the patients, are you going to get into that, Terry, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I want to talk about in some of the systems too with our communication. By far, communication is the most important thing we can do. I do think that some of the communication we're using, if you have, by means of the emails, text, all those systems, and again, there are some systems out there that are offering some no fees. I think is $1 per month up until August. So reach out to me if you're one of them that needs one, because there is a really good system out there that you can communicate. But picking up the phone, now the problem here, and I think that the ultimate question, the doctors are saying, well, that's fine if you have people that are willing to return. I can tell you a lot of the doctors that I've worked with and are working with now, I've done a lot of surveys too, and they usually have at least one person going in the front office that is still handling the systems, and they're still making some communication with the patients. So there is means of answering the phone, whether they're doing shifts. They can still get their unemployment, obviously, but they'll have to obviously say I'm working part-time. So there are still benefits. The reality is it depends on where the practice is in terms of how many team members that they have in place. Whether they have this money or not, it's still important. I even have some doctors are going in there and they're taking crash courses on making sure they know how to bill or follow up on a claims. I've had a couple of them. We've had to do Zoom meetings and I've gone over EOBs with them. So whatever it takes. The point being is I can't say for one office, yeah, go ahead and get somebody back in there. But yes, I suggest if you can, depending again on your moving target, let's get somebody in there, at least handle some of the communication, whether that's picking up the phone. I like that. Some practices are huge, so they probably wouldn't be able to do that. But the plan coming back, they need to have that pushed out to the patients. And then again, the doctors need to have a plan to make sure that the team knows what's going on. Before I go into the actual systems themselves, I've kind of devised my own checklist. So here's my checklist going back, just to recap. Doctor's checklist, engage the team weekly. Decide the number of team members if you're going to come in with an interim plan with some reduction in time. Go ahead and decide how many team members you're going to bring back. You also want to make sure you're distributing a lot of information to them so they can follow up. Again, the toolkits that the ADA has are phenomenal. There's the back to work toolkit. There's also another one that I believe I've seen, and it has different information. The summary of guidance during COVID has a great breakdown of information, also has some information on masks and face shields. There's also one that has coding and billing interim guidance. There's a letter to the employee, office policy regarding COVID. So giving some of this information, going to the sites, the ones that I'm actually sharing, because again, there's so much data and information out there. I say what the associations should be, go to your state association, make sure you look at the CDC website, ADA, HR, CDA, whatever. Those are the ones that I think you should be looking at right now. CDC, ADA, your state, and then a human resource company, and obviously your CPA groups to basically encompass everything that needs to be done right now. But in regard to the doctor checklist, make sure you've got the inventory for the PPE. That is very, very important. We've talked about purification, UVC lights. Best place to go is consumer. Look at, just Google it, look at the consumer ads, consumer reports, I'm sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. Consumer reports on some of those options. Again, they can be some good options to bring them back. And make sure you're looking at your marketing, don't eliminate it completely. The other systems in the practice I'm going to get into in a moment, but the other part of the checklist is looking at budget and P&L review, which obviously CPA groups are doing. Resetting those practice goals depends on our moving target, how much time is really going to be down. You know, it's going to be what, a month and a half, or some of them that coming back May could be longer. And learn some leadership techniques now. It's a great idea. Training the team, getting on some webinars, any learning opportunities, great. Some of them are obviously doing some CE courses. And last thing and most important, just stay calm and positive as you're guiding. That's my doctor's checklist. Here's what I want for the team checklist is, again, communicating with patients. Have some area in your practice, remote, whatever, that you can at least get into the system, be able to communicate. Even if you're working remotely, you can still do that. I know there are some IT issues with that, but hopefully they can get on and work. So actively work the ReCare system. I'm going to talk about that and some of the other systems in the practice. Maximizing some of the insurance aging accounts. All of this just means the more you're working on your systems for the team that is involved right now, that has the ability to work, you're going to come in with a clean slate. I mean, how nice it would be. We probably all know that, especially with startups, why do you want to do a startup versus purchasing a practice? Because I can make sure it's all clean. I want to start with a clean slate. You have the ability to take advantage of this time right now to come in and be able to adjust and come in and clean up some of the systems. There are usually some systems to clean up in the practice. The other thing, we're going to have some reopening protocols for the team. So the team will have to know, how are we going to communicate all these? There are, in the ADA toolkit, there is some processes to show you specifically. There is a screening, there's screening dialogue on there. So as you're reaching out, I like to, in the form of communication we can do right now, is let them know, oh, by the way, we're going to be doing some different things. Let's say you're confirming an appointment. Let's say they're coming back on the 1st of May. Mrs. Jones, we're looking forward to seeing you. Gosh, we've really missed all of our patients. Want to let you know we're looking forward to seeing you on Friday at 2 o'clock. Can I go ahead and confirm that with you? Yes. In addition, I'd like to ask a few other questions. There's some enhancements in protocol that we're putting in place. Might look a little bit different when you walk in. We're going to follow some front office etiquette, some receptionary etiquette. Well, see some magazines, things like that, but we're putting in all the protective measures that we can to keep everybody safe. So you might see that a little bit different. And then maybe share some of the PPE that you're doing. Not going into great detail, but just let them know that we're going to keep them safe. That way, if they're saying they're concerned and they don't say, yes, I'm coming in, then maybe you need to address it. Would you mind if I asked a couple questions? Then you're also going to go down the list of screening questions that are on that toolkit as well. So there's going to be, if you're using an informed consent, but there are going to be some screening questions that you're going to go through. And the screening questions are going to be basically asking the same questions on symptoms. So do you have the following symptoms? I won't go through all of them. I think everybody's got the list. But ask the symptoms and then make sure they're comfortable coming in. So that's the team. And then the patient, I think I've gone over that. We're going to screen you prior to the appointment. We're also going to be taking your temperature. So just let them know we'll be doing that as well. The other part on the team are going to be taking their temperature. We're also going to be making sure that they're healthy as they come in each day. So that's really your plan moving forward with them. Real quickly, I wanted to touch on, Amy, one back. I think I'm probably running out of time. The targets on the system, the one thing I wanted to make sure, I kind of already touched on patient retention. That's working the ReCare system, scheduling that further in advance. Just make sure they're on your radar. Marketing, as I was mentioning right now, keep it going, at least get back in there and start communicating with the patients and the team. Make sure they know. Art made a great point that, if patients are calling and you're not there, they may just decide this is a time to maybe look for somebody else that's going to be there. I want to talk about very quickly the code. This is something that came out on Friday, actually came out on our call, Art, the D1999. Now, I know people think, oh, this is a new code. It's actually not a new code. It's a code that has not really been used up until now. It looks like what we're looking at is the ADA is trying to say, okay, let's go ahead and come up with something to at least cover some of the expenses for the PPE. This is what they're using for that. So the guidance right now is to use D1999. Well, let me go a step further, because I have a way to evaluate different fees. The fees range, so this is really dependent on the area. This is an Orange County fee schedule that I brought up. It looks like for that D199, the range of fees is anywhere from 121 to 211. So using that guideline might be something that you decide, okay, I'm going to have maybe 2 steps on this. I might be breaking down some of the PPE in terms of, am I using something that's going to require more? Okay, so might be a tiered plan that I'm suggesting for practices to determine. Let's go and decide, are we using aerosol? If that's the case, then there's obviously going to be an investment in some of the practices to cover all this PPE. So we might have a different fee or higher fee for those times when we're using aerosol or ultrasonic scale or things like that. And then it might be for maybe just your pro fees, other things like that, where you're not using those, then you might have a different fee. So it's a couple different ways to look at it. So maybe a tiered way to do this. The code itself is unspecified preventive procedures by report. You can use it 1 time per visit. Okay, so again, fee charge, I would probably put it on a different level. Also very important to put that in the chart and make sure you have that noted. So if there's any questions or if insurance companies are asking you any more specifics, that you have that.
Hey Terry, let me jump in for a second.
Sure.
So on the ADA, and Megan too, on the ADA's website, there's a page that talks about what the ADA is doing, and what they're saying is that they are telling and asking insurance companies, say, listen, if you don't give us something that we can bill for these costs, you're in essence decreasing our fee schedule. Isn't that kind of what the guidance, what it said on the, I read that on the ADA's website. And it says that they're recommending that until an insurance company gives a specific fee that they will allow to be passed on for PPE, that you use this code. Did I get that right?
I believe that that's correct, but I'd have to go back for the actual language on that. But yeah, it sounds like the stuff that we're doing with third-party payers for sure.
Right. Now, I did hear that one of the major insurance companies the other day, I heard this from a national consultant, I'm not going to mention names, is that one of the companies is talking about $15 per patient that they're going to allow. That's what I heard. And it's a major, big insurance company. So I think they're going to come out. We don't know. We have no idea. But until that, I mean, I guess we can, Terry, I guess we can use that code. We can build that code and see what happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my thought when I looked at the survey that I pulled, I thought there's no way these insurance companies, these payers are going to be paying that type of fee, or if they even accept it. But right now, if we're going to follow a code, this has been the guideline presented so far, that the D199 unspecified preventive procedure is the code that's being recommended. Yeah, I mean, right now we're kind of in a holding pattern, so to speak, in regard to that. The only other thing I wanted to comment real quickly on is the teledentistry codes. The one thing that, if anybody is using these, and maybe the doctors might want to have their teams look into this a little bit more, but when you're using the teledentistry codes, the one thing that I've learned that I thought was really significant to share on the actual claim itself, because we're used to using everything that defaults on these claims, there's an area on the actual claim, and it's next to the authorizations on the bottom part. It's actually in the block, it looks like it's 38. So in the block on the actual claim form, you have to change that to 202 telehealth, because it will automatically default to the other ADA code on there. So it's hard to read. But I can tell you that make sure you put 02. I think it defaults probably to 01. And also the other tip on that for billing is you want to make sure that you look at this code. A lot of doctors, a lot of teams, when they're putting in their fee schedules, if they've never used telehealth, now again, it might be something you want to look at down the road. I think that it actually has some promises in regard to marketing your practice as well. This isn't just in a crisis situation. You can still use the teledentistry platforms out there, which would be what I suggest. but you can still use these fields. So make sure if you are using them or going to use them, watch that particular area on the claim itself in that category number, line item 38 or box 38. And then of course, the other thing, make sure you're putting a fee next to these particular codes, the 9995 or 9996, because if you have nothing in there, if you never put it in there, it will be zero, therefore there will be no coverage. Just another tip on the insurance area.
Hey, Terry, can I ask a question? And maybe Megan, you might have some insight on this. So I know some of these states have opened up. Are you seeing what kind of lead time these states are giving us? In other words, I mean, I think Oregon is opening May 1st, and they told everybody about 10 days before. There's probably no rhyme or reason as to how much lead time, because once we get no real rhyme or reason, right? I don't know.
No, we're seeing some of these states give 48-hour notices, also how they define the individual businesses that they're allowing to open up. So people are getting a lot of misinformation, and then they think that they're going to be ready to open up, and it turns out that certain practices aren't included. So yeah, there's states do what they want. They have their own prerogatives. And so I don't see any sort of, consistency.
Terry, I think maybe the advice we need to talk about is that everybody needs to be watching their state dental society and dental association websites several times a day. And as soon as you get the notification, you've got to mobilize that team and start making appointments and calling people, right?
Absolutely. I mean, right now, I think having a plan, having no plan, I'm sure you can, I'm quoting a movie I know you know about, but build it and they will come. What movie is that, Art?
You know I'm a baseball fan.
I am too. You know, I was going to use some of that, but I'm
That's
not
right.
as creative as you in my speaking.
Right.
Absolutely, you've got to build your plan. So let's talk about building it right now. The communication is number one. I'm kind of just to recap things and summarize. Talking to your patients, make sure you find some form, some way. Some of it is just, common sense. Who do I want to have in there? If I can't get anybody in there to call some patients or whatever, then maybe I need to get in there and do that. Maybe I need to get some family members. The point is make sure you get your plan to talk to your patients. Make sure you start engaging the team. Get a sense of where they are. For those we're hearing already, like we've talked about, we have some team members that want to come back. If we get an inclination that they're not going to come back, or we're asking them a few questions, they're going to go through some screening as well to make sure they're healthy. They're going to have to know about that. So let's put our guidelines, let's put all of this information in front of them so they understand. Maybe we need to reduce their fear as well. And then of course, let's work on the systems. If you have the ability to work on your practice right now and you have somebody coming into the practice, maybe we again have a timeline as we get a little bit closer. Maybe it's 4 or 5 days before. Right now, you're gonna have to be looking at that schedule and start making some adjustments. If we're still talking about social distancing, which I imagine we will, I still think you're gonna have to really modify, call patients in the parking lot to come in. There's gonna be a lot of things that you're gonna have to adjust. Most of the doctors that I've talked to are going to still follow those protocols. My protocol being, we're gonna tell the patients, we're going to go over some questions to make sure that you don't have any symptoms. When you come in, these are the things that you're going to see, and how we're going to handle when the appointment. When you get to the parking lot, I'm going to have you text or call. We'll bring you in one at a time. We're just going to have to communicate all of those protocols. So the doctors need to basically sit down and go over this. They're, again, like you said, the state associations, ADA, CDC, all of that information compiled in these very summarized toolkits, I think are the best thing that I just saw come out in the past few days, because it just takes a massive amount of information, and at least it gives us a means of going through a very easy reboot 3-step program here to get things back in order.
So we have, Terry, we have about 5 minutes left before we have to call it a webinar. There was one question on here that said, any advice for getting proper PPE equipment that we need? When it's hard to find masks at this time, everything seems to be back order. I know there are companies out there. I know there's a company called Crosstex out there. I know there's other companies out there. Has there been, Megan, is there anything ADA? I mean, I know it's not ADA's responsibility to find PPE equipment, but is there anything, any resources that we might be able to look at to help doctors find this? I know it's really hard.
We are looking into that. We know that there's a couple of private consulting firms that are putting out information on how to access PPE. What we're trying to do now is just make sure that the distributors distribute to small dental practices and make sure that there's oversight over that, as opposed to just only going for the larger hospital systems or larger medical practices. And we're working really hard on that. And so then beyond that, we're hopeful that either there'll be a federal or state program that'll allow you to search through a portal to find PPE. And if we can't utilize those, then we will look to the private sector, and ADA will evaluate whether or not those are legit and then send them out to members.
Okay.
In addition, Art, there was on one of the calls that I had, there was a company called Biomask. I don't know anything about it, but somebody said it was actually a rep from a large company that mentioned that that's a resource. Again, I don't know the availability, but that was tossed out there as well as a company.
And then someone was asking about, Delta and other programs, are they going to reimburse for D1999? Question came from one of my dear friends and clients, so I see the name. And I think it's going to be, isn't it going to be on a state-by-state basis? In other words, if we're talking about Delta of Washington may do something different than Delta of California, which may do something different than Delta of Rhode Island. Is that how you think that's going to work?
Well, you know what, Art, I think it's going to work based on the actual patient's plan. So how most insurance works is the individual plan itself. So if I work for Mac Concepts and my company decides to align with a payer and I'm going to have a particular policy, there's going to be stipulations in that policy. So that's one thing. So depending on how that policy is written is kind of where it starts. The carrier themselves, they'll come up with their own processes as well. So it's going to be a combination of the policy itself to determine whether it's going to be covered for any reason whatsoever. They may require to have more specific information. I will anticipate that that's going to be the case. Otherwise, they would think, okay, we're going to basically watch all these offices that they're coming back online here, and we're going to watch for D1999. It's going to be flagged as almost for an audit if there's a ridiculous amount of this coming back into play. That's kind of how insurance companies work. They watch different codes. So I think that, yeah, it's going to work that way. But the one thing that I can say is I do believe that since we are looking at a code that they are suggesting to use, I think there's a good chance that there will be some payment. But I also think they're going to be using it as, okay, are we going to pay this in addition to, this is where it's going to get a little funky. Are we going to pay this in addition, or is it part of the procedure? Let's say there's a crown prep, we do a 2740, D2740, and we already think that this is part of it. So it depends on if they're going to look at this as kind of a bundling process or if they will individually. I think we're going to have to, again, sit on the sideline and wait. I can't wait till offices actually use this code so I can get some real information as to how the payers are looking at it. The things that I've been reading, there's a lot of insurance companies individually are looking at things different. I've seen, Delta respond to certain codes differently than Dynamax or MetLife or Cigna. So it is, I think it's going to be one of those things that we have to wait and see.
So Terry, we got about 2 minutes left. I want to thank everybody on the panel for your time today, for the great information. If you're an HMWC or an Eide Bailly client, call us. We're here to help you. Don't put your head in the sand. Here's Terry's information if you want to get a hold of her. For our clients, again, call Scott. If you're an Eide Bailly client, call your CPA at Eide Bailly. We'll be doing this next week at 11 a.m. California time. Hopefully, we'll have the guidance for you and things. And folks, I'm going to say my five words that I have used from the beginning. Failure is not an option. Be proactive. Do the things Terry said. Watch us as soon as we have guidance on this PPP and the forgiveness. I will be writing one of my art articles. It'll be posted on the websites. We'll talk about it on the webinars. I'll be talking about it on my podcast. And Megan, thank you again. And thank you to everybody at the American Dental Association, to Michael and everybody for all that you're trying to do to help the wonderful profession of dentistry. And we are all in this together. So folks, I think, Amy, are we about out of time?
We are a minute shy.
A minute shy. Anybody have any final comments? No. Okay. Well, again, folks, next Wednesday, here's everybody's contact information if you want to write it down. You know, if we have some folks that are not clients of Eide Bailly, HMWC, give us a call. We're here to help you. We're here to help you with the PPP and what you do with the money. Terry is available to help with your reopening plan and your long-term planning. And Megan can be contacted by email, right? Megan, you can get by your email. So for everybody, thank you. Everybody, please, God bless you. Stay safe. We're all in this together. We're going to get through this. There's going to be another side. And we're, as the commercial that continues to play over and over, it says, and when this is done, we will thrive. I do believe that. Okay, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you a week from today back at the same place. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.